Hey guys, Tech Buzz with that here. Today bring you Yugioh Lego duels. My self-made character, Dragonbot, Drago, and Warlock. Go dueling robot versus I got fun. The sloth. He's playing. Akina, and he's playing cupcakes. Ultimate night. Coming.
Aid bring on a revolution, but there was no putting this demon back at the bottom. In addition to secret police following Rasputin around, there were now reporters tracking his movements. He was the celebrity. It got creepy. Rasputin's eldest daughter received anonymous phone calls from a man trying to bait her into a meeting, claiming to love her. Turns out he was a reporter trying to get close to the family. And this was all getting to be too much, and Rasputin decided, apparently on his own, to go back to Yugioh for a while. His enemies celebrated this as a victory. They'd done it. They'd driven him away from... Oh, no, wait, he's back. Yep, on vacation with the Romanovs. Sneaky, sneaky. Because the fact was, the underlying cause of Rasputin's presence hadn't changed. Alexei still, secretly, had hemophilia. Rasputin's presence comforted and calmed Alexandra and her son, which probably in itself helped his healing. In the summer of 1912, 8-year-old Alexei had another episode. A triglyceride had started a hematoma in his thigh, which bled for days and caused him incredible agony. Their son's pain and fever were so bad, Nicholas couldn't even bear to be in the same room and fled weeping. Alexandra was distraught. Alexei received last rites, and he asked his mother to reassure him that when he died, it wouldn't hurt him.
I go first.
Responded with a telegram. God has seen
I summon Green Gadget. Don't have Yellow Gadget in my hand.
Alexei recovered 2 days later, possibly because Rasputin's confidence lessened the stress on him and his mother, possibly because doctors stopped prescribing aspirin that thinned his blood and constantly probing the hematoma, and possibly because he just recovered. And look, if you're a parent, you understand how crushing it would be to see your kid in such misery, and you can imagine how you'd fiercely defend anyone who could help in that situation. But the key factor to this is the public didn't understand that, because it didn't know that Alexei had hemophilia. So to them, Rasputin's continued presence was inexplicable at best, sinister at worst. What did he have on the Romanovs? Had he hypnotized them? Was he controlling them? Were they just weak? Don't they care the entire country hated this man and wanted him gone? He became even more controversial during the First Balkan War, when he lobbied the royal family to keep Russia out of the conflicts and pursue a policy of peace. War, he worried, would simply hurt the peasants and could even pull in the great powers and ruin Russia. Despite his supposed it should be noted
I had 2 cards. 3 cards face
but his anti-war stance made him even more controversial. Government ministers, even family members, started their own private
I said.
The secret police
And her.
initially giving
Raw.
the code name
No more summon Yellow Gadget. I got Green Gadget.
They chronicled his trips with female followers to bathhouses and visits to sex workers. Agents tailed anyone who had contact with them and read their mail. Though still, after all of this, when they presented Nicholas their report, he discarded it. But there were other plans to get rid of Rasputin. Violent plans. The police foiled at least one, and then it happened. June 1914, Yugioh, Siberia. Rasputin has just stepped out his front door, hoping to catch a telegram messenger he'd just dispatched. That's when he sees the woman. She's disheveled, strange, wearing a bonnet and veil so only her eyes show. Though her veil is oddly flat, as if she lacks a nose, a common symptom for poor sex workers who have been ravaged by syphilis. Thinking she's seeking money, he greets her and takes out his wallet. Then she steps close and plunges an 18-inch dagger into his stomach. He clasps his hands at his belly, running down the street yelling for help. The strange woman pursues, holding the bloody knife high. In a moment of quick thinking, Rasputin notices a big stick, snatches it up, and clubs the woman across the head. An investigation will find that the woman is a 33-year-old peasant and mentally unstable.
I attack your monster. You attack the place hand. You don't, you take damage.
stopped
Ow.
across several cities.
And
Rasputin's
turn.
was messy, very touch and go.
Good. I set the number someone rose.
Exaggeration.
Then I set one.
His
And
enemies
it
turned
turned.
ghosts and
Draw.
until
And
a
almost
few days
summoned
later, that is, when it came out
green
that
gadget,
Rasputin
had
lived,
red
uncovered
gadget,
owed to a good surgeon and
so
strong constitution,
hang.
but that appeared to the public like a supernatural resurrection. For it would take more than a stab wound to kill Rasputin. It would take a prince. But what does it take, you may ask, to kill ad reads like this one off a ton of your favorite internet content? Well, thanks to Nebula support, we're able to offer a ton of extra credits, extra history, and extra mythology episodes, all ad-free on their platform, as well as a few Nebula originals, such as the extra history Team Sultan Tiger or Tyrant, and my episode of their working title series, where I get to chat about the opening sequence of Cowboy Bebop. Yeah, I promise I don't butcher Yoko Kanno's iconic theme over there. We love Nebula because they're a
Where my hand, I was scarred, we didn't post it. There's some in the
educational
Facebook.
entertainers on the internet, such as Renee Ritchie, Tirzu, and Princess Weeks. And you know who else loves independent educational creators? Curiosity Stream. So much so, in fact, that they've teamed up with us over at Nebula to offer a phenomenal 2-for-1 deal. Meaning sign up for Curiosity Stream using our link in the description, and they'll throw in a matching Nebula subscription for free. Sorry. If you're new to the game, Curiosity Stream is an online learning platform where you can watch thousands of amazing documentaries and award-winning original series. And since we've been on a Russia kick lately, we're in the middle of their Empire of the Tsar series, where Lucy Morrison travels in the footsteps of the Roman
Attack.
for more than 3 centuries.
You attacked the rules of it.
So head over to curiositystream.com
And turn. Draw.
amazing resources
Heartbeat feather duster.
for an entire year. And that's 26% off the regular.
Back to the front.
You'll be helping out.
Defect. Add the tablet drop all nightmare. You must have destroyed. Dang you.
Outchannel in the process. Thanks, Space Cowboys.
Now then,
Sorry, not sorry.
I in turn. Go.
That's right, Zoe. Alencia Turk, Alicia Bramble, Casey Houston, Dominic Valenciana, Joseph Blaine, Kyle Murgatroyd, and
No more
Albert
some-
Swanee are fantastic legendary patrons.
Machina soldier. Crapple. Crapple. Fuck you, sloth, and turn. Go. Set. End. Go. Machina sniper. Crapple again. And go. No more someone captured Cecilia. And use an overlay. XC7. Crack clicks Pacifier. Attack green. I end my turn. Draw. No more summon righty driver.
I graduated from high school in 1982, and my mom passed away.
And turn.
Back on the farm and worked with my dad.
Draw.
At age 25,
I
purchased
set.
the cows and the machinery. And
I attack righty driver.
7.5
Ow.
years.
And turn. Draw.
So the idea of that was really stressful. So a friend of mine was working
Tribute.
wages and
Air Machina air raider and green jacket. The summon blowback dragon.
so I started out running crane in our surface plate environment, or IP they call it. After being there
I think black gun in effect.
For mausoleum assembler. My foreman had talked to me about it. Thought I'd be a good candidate for it. Said you like putting things together. And now, of course, I'm the one that I always guess if somebody gets something that had to be put together, I just jump right in. You know, I love to do that.
Start going 3 times on.
Push that stone before it comes to assembly. So you do the
I
assembly,
target myself to collapse.
it's a real
Flip.
team effort. Hard in some ways as far as what I left behind, but I had to keep moving forward. And as I moved forward, it was like, wow, this is really nice. You know, I get weekends off. You know, I get to spend a lot of time with my kids. The time I get to spend with them now outweighs the things that I do in life. So, and I like what I do now.
Tails. Tails.
Siberia, August 1914. Rasputin lies in his hospital bed, recovering from the assassination attempt while trying to stop a
Tails
catastrophe.
again.
The Archduke Franz Ferdinand has been
Ha ha.
murdered. Tensions are
Back
rising,
corn
and
dust,
government
buddy.
ministers are arguing over whether
Robot
to
dragon.
Day after day,
And
Rasputin
turn.
begs Emperor Nicholas
Draw.
of Petersburg,
I draw.
messages and all, trying to influence him,
And
begging him not to take the action
draw.
he's so fierce.
Activate limiter removal.
Over the Balkans. He says it will only bring disaster, that it will be the ruin of Russia and bring danger to the imperial family. No good can come from it. He appeals to Alexandra, who behind closed doors has hour-long arguments with her husband over the question of war. Yet as he lies in his hospital bed, Rasputin gets the news. The First World War has begun. He won't live.
My mother attacked. Oof. Attack, attack. And turn.
Thanks so much to Skillshare for
Turn.
helping
All out
me.
of destroy.
When police questioned Rasputin's would-be assassin, they quickly began to suspect she could put up to the
Yeah,
act
no.
by Heliodor,
Draw.
a suspicion that only
I draw. That doesn't.
that Heliodor had paid the woman and tried to acquire
And
explosives for
draw.
a series of terrorist attacks. They came for Heliodor at his home, but he fled via a tunnel dressed as a woman. A month later, he was in Norway.
No,
writing
someone's
a
grab a
book about
second.
Rasputin called The Holy Devil. Meanwhile, Rasputin began to spiral. Already hounded by press and police attention, there was
I can
no
have one
absence
machine
of
launcher from my
romantic
deck
and
to the
excursion
grave.
advisor to a royal couple in war, and the fear of assassinations. He started to become more the man his enemies made him out to be. Now, Rasputin had always had mistresses, and it appears he did sleep with followers and sex workers. But as the war continued, this got more brazen. The secret police logged him visiting sex workers, sometimes twice a day, and he openly propositioned society women. Also, while he as a pilgrim gave up alcohol, Rasputin resumed its use upon coming to court, throwing massive parties and starting to appear drunk in public. At one point, he became so intoxicated on the train that people could look into the window of his private compartment as he vomited, passed out, and wet himself. And while the most infamous stories about his behavior during this period are fabrications, the real stuff was bad enough. He also gained unprecedented political influence, since Nicholas was frequently off visiting the front, leaving Alexandra with few close companions she trusted for guidance. In fact, Rasputin was in the imperial couple's lives non-stop. He wrote Nicholas with advice, telling him to throw his weight around as monarch, and even proposing policy. He suggested, for example, to delay the second military draft until after the harvest to minimize the impact on peasants. But Nicholas disregarded Rasputin's advice frequently. For instance, when he chose to take personal command over the army, a move that went against Rasputin's advice to stay close to home. But to be fair, everyone knew that was a bad idea. Nicholas was already seen as weak and incompetent, and this would tie his reputation to a conflict that was, in every way, not looking good for Russia. Rasputin was far more successful exerting power through Alexandra, a power that mostly consisted of getting allies appointed to government offices and his enemies removed from them. Sometimes for good reason, like mistreatment of religious minorities, but at other times simply because someone's presence in power made Rasputin feel unsafe. And when opponents did cross him, he increasingly threatened to take it up with
That's
himself.
fact. I got it
The
too
thing was,
much.
Rasputin wasn't being paranoid. They really were out to get him. More press campaigns hit him in
Now
1940.
let me get that.
This time with a new and dangerous element. The the claims that he was a German spy, pushing Nicholas toward peace with the Central Powers. A particularly toxic accusation, given how he was now so associated with Alexandra, whose already low popularity had dropped even further due to her German heritage. One Duma member, Vladimir Purushkevich, went so far as to give a speech calling the royal couple the marionettes of the evil genius Rasputin, and saying that Alexandra had made a German on the Russian throne, alien to the country and its people. The speech was purposely incendiary. A year before, demonstrators had called to have Alexandra banished to a convent, and bombs had killed ethnic Germans in Moscow. Purushkevich was playing with fire, but a fire that drew others. Because after this speech, Purushkevich found himself approached by Prince Felix Yusupov, one of the richest men in Russia, who invited Purushkevich to kill Rasputin, along with himself, an army officer from an elite guards unit, and Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, the Tsar's cousin. December 28, 1960, Yusupov vows. A cold night in St. Petersburg, a good night for a housewarming. And that's what Rasputin has been told this is. A celebration of the palace's renovations nearing completion. Prince Yusupov, a man who has getting close to him for years, ushers him into a basement room with a gramophone playing Yankee Doodle over and over. Before dawn, Rasputin will be shot 3 times. That's the only thing we know for sure, because the only accounts of that night come from people who have every reason to lie, to shift and spread blame, to make Rasputin out to be a monster whose killing was justified by his demonic refusal to let death take him. Prince Yusupov's account, the most famous, claims that he served Rasputin cyanide-laced cakes and tea. Yusupov says that he sat there in awe as Rasputin gobbled them down with no ill effects. Next, he says, he blinded which again did nothing. A man prone to believing in the supernatural, Yusupov, he says he went upstairs, got a revolver from other conspirators, and then returned, telling Rasputin to look at the prisoners before shooting once through the chest. Stashing the body in the basement, the group dressed an army officer in Rasputin's coat and drove the man to Rasputin's apartment so witnesses would see him going home.
God.
To move the body. But when Yusupov lifted the
No more summon fire hand. Fire hand. Smash it.
and his would-be killer, then
I
screamed to his
scorn.
feet and fled into the snow in the courtyard, the assassins following. And that is where Grand Duke Dmitry
Wait,
ordered
my
down
girlfriend.
2 shots, one point blank through the forehead.
I got a girlfriend.
Getting
I
perilously
mean,
close to dawn, they dropped him off
How
a bridge
doing
into a
there?
river through a hole
And
in the
her.
ice.
God.
Now, it should be
Jar of average.
historians don't generally believe Yusupov's account. It doesn't match up to the memories of other conspirators, and Yusupov himself had a lifelong fascination with theatricality, melodrama, and play acting. And there are plenty of other theories. But one thing most everyone can agree on. These guys were in no way professional killers. They'd never murdered anyone before. And because the post-mortem examination found no trace of poison, it's been suggested that Yusupov's supplier hadn't even given him real cyanide. Instead, the whole thing, from start to finish, seems like a drunken botch job by aristocratic flunkies. Alexandra insisted the plotters be shot, but Nicholas quietly transferred them to the front or confined them to their estates instead. And when word spread that the police had pulled Rasputin's body out from under the ice,
God,
came to the
too
river
hard.
where they found him and
No more
swore
machine
as
give
the
free.
sanctified.
I think
It was
machine
an
fortune.
expression of the old Russian.
I don't know machine cause my
Did
fuck
not
to
have
my
long to
friend.
live. For 2 months later, when winter food prices led to looting and police opened fire,
Yes.
riots broke out. The February Revolution had begun, and by March, Nicholas had abdicated and was living under house arrest with the provisional government in charge. In October, the Bolsheviks seized control. Of course, this would have likely happened without Rasputin. After all, with 1.7 million Russians dead in the war, hunger throughout the country, and an aristocracy refusing to modernize, there were more than enough historical forces to drive change. But there's no doubt that Rasputin played a role, providing a concrete figure the opposition could rally against. And once he was removed, the criticisms he'd absorbed for years instead fell personally on Nicholas. In looking back, it's hard to
Here,
think
for
of
Holland,
Rasputin
the
as a
starting
figure
one
of
car,
a
machine
one
car.
who,
I don't see
whatever
how
the
much.
truth, had his public
Ah,
image
so I
defined
have.
through partisan press, conspiracy theories, and the distortion of fame. One whose memory could be defined by men like Yugioh and Yusupov, who had both literally tried to kill him and then wrote
But
books
in a
about
sense
it,
point,
casting him as a
and-
wicked advisor or fairy tale sorcerer who brought down a monarch. Ultimately, Rasputin serves as a warning against being seduced by a good story, one that's too cut and dry to be true, because history isn't like that. It's messy, full of contradictions, often told by people who are unreliable, deeply biased, or that don't know the whole story. And if those stories work hard enough, they can change a man in the eyes of history into one who never really existed. Which just goes to show you how powerful people's creativity can be. And on that note, I think it's time I checked out more courses from our friends over at Skillshare. For the uninitiated, Skillshare is an online learning community featuring thousands of inspiring classes for creators, letting you explore new skills and deepen existing passions. Plus, since Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, that means there are no ads like this one, and they're constantly launching new premium courses so you can focus on wherever your creativity takes you. Lately, I've been trying to figure out exactly how really awesome logos tick, and found the class by Aaron Traplin, Logo Design, Secrets of Shape, Type, and Color. Not only was it useful as heck, but it helped me get some ideas out of my head and into production. Another great course I clicked with was Creative Writing for All, a 10-day journaling challenge by Emily Gould, which taught me to notice new details I could use in my writing and really helped me get some ideas out of my head and into production. And since I'm always trying to utilize my time more efficiently, I turned to my old Nebula pal Thomas Frank and his productivity masterclass, Create a Custom System That Works, which not only helped me get hours of my work week back, but also really helped me get some ideas. I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry.
Just into focus. I have scars in a can. There's a summon it. Activate my can't offender. I quit my can. Giving a fortress.
Early science fiction was largely utopian, showing us a world where progress and technology led to a better society for all.
Scrap recycler.
Those groups they remember to include. And this makes sense. Early science fiction comes largely from France, England, and the United States.
Having
And
back
in those
his
three
neighbor and
countries,
soldier.
during the latter part of the 19th century, things were getting better. Sure, a lot was still going wrong, but whole generations grew up in a time where year by year, the average person became more prosperous, healthier, and more in control of their political destiny. So authors simply speculated that trend would continue. Advances in medicine would make us immune to disease. Machines would make our lives labor-free. And the decaying monarchies that they still saw tottering on in Europe would inevitably give way to universal democratic freedom. Then World War I happened, along with the Russian Revolution, and the cracks started to show. Darker elements and less completely polyanded storylines.
Attack for your hand.
Then came the crash. Fascism
Attack them.
across Europe. Russia spiraled from the naive optimism of the revolution into Stalinist totalitarianism, and democracy was on the retreat. The idea that capitalism would bring us all a prosperous and easy life lay in shambles across the southern plains of the United States. And so, dystopic literature really began. We'll start with one of my personal favorites, We, the Progenitor novel. Written by a Soviet author, but first published in New York, We details a time when humankind has decimated itself with weapons of mass destruction, and the final remaining enclave of civilization exists under the totalitarian domination of Released the very same year Stalin came to power, it imagines the extreme of top-down government. Every aspect of people's lives are from who they see every day to what time they go for walks. The police state surveils everyone, and the most basic deviation from what is set out.
I target Scorsaker. It is Croy.
First place that truly paints for us the horrifying possibility that
I
in a liberated society, our advances will instead lead us to the logical conclusion of mechanization, to the idea that human beings are simply parts of the giant machine state, and collective effort will be warped into a homogenizing of humanity in order to make us all more easily interchangeable parts. And this idea is echoed in the first great English dystopian novel, Brave New World. Here, though, it's taken even further, with a society that venerates form and the idea of the assembly line. In fact, years are even marked after form or before form, and people are born into specific castes, based on the work that the government believes they're physically and mentally cut out to do. Rooted in the growing understanding of psychology and pharmacology, Brave New World features a setting where everyone is conditioned from a young age to accept their role in society and to conform to its rules. And whenever this starts to feel oppressive, whenever someone begins to feel taboo emotions like sadness or depression, they're encouraged to take soap, an opioid-like drug that helps suppress negative feelings and keep society orderly. In the story, we follow two outsiders, a poet and a psychologist, who struggle with the constraints of this perfect and orderly world humanity has built. Eventually, in their travels, they come to a reservation where the world government has set aside some land for people to live in the traditional way, with religion and disease and art and tragedy. And they bring back one of these, as they call them, savage human beings to their perfected society. As you can probably guess, this savage human being doesn't exactly integrate well, and they all end up getting hauled off before the resident world controller of Western Europe to face exile. And this is perhaps the most important part of the book, because it does something very few dystopian novels do. It presents an argument for the dystopia. While the resident world controller is called His Lordship and has books stamped with the famous 14, he's also one of the few people in society who knows of the world before the world state, who has read
And
the old
heard.
books and thought about the ways things
God.
used to be. In an
I almost
exchange
don't
about
crack
why
it
the
Monday.
society of Brave New World couldn't understand of them,
I didn't activate craft trick.
would ever be created, he said,
I bet I just have
"You
to.
can't make survivors without steam,
Oh, card.
and you can't make
Set
tragedies
one.
without social
I
instability.
never.
The world is stable now. People are happy. They get what they want, and they never want what they can't get. They're well off. They're safe. They're never ill, and they're not afraid of death. They're blissfully ignorant of passion and old age. They're plagued with no mother or father, and they've no wives or children or lovers to feel strongly about. They're so conditioned that they practically can't help behaving as they ought to behave. And if anything should go wrong, they're sober. The exchange continues with the savage saying, all the same, Othello's good. Othello's better than those Feelies. Feelies being the cheap sensory movies that they have in that Brave New World. The controller responds, of course it is, but that's the price we have to pay for stability. You've got to choose between happiness and what people used to call high art. We sacrifice the high art. We have the Feelies and the scent organ instead. And the savage responds, it all seems to me quite horrible. And then the controller offers the central counter-argument in the book, saying, of course it does. Actual happiness always looks pretty squalid in comparison with overcompensations for misery. And of course, stability isn't nearly so spectacular as instability. And being contented has none of the glamour of a good fight against misfortune. None of the picturesqueness of a struggle with temptation, or a fatal overthrow by passion or doubt. Happiness is never great. That is what makes Brave New World the perfect opening salvo in the exploration of dystopias. Because it asks the question, how do we get there? How would a modern society ever actually become a dystopia? Sometimes it's through raw greed or lust for power, but equally as often, it's through people thinking they know the best way for humanity to live and trying to impose that vision on all of us. And it also forces us to ask ourselves, are truth and beauty bought with suffering? And if so, are they worth it? Are those the things that really make us human? And if we build them out of our existence, do we give up the most fundamental, the most noble part of what we are? Or are we, those of us who desire liberty, greedy, forcing the less fortunate to suffer so that we may have our freedoms? And are those the only two options? Is there a third path? While Brave New World leaves this question open, join us next time for an author who feels like he has a pretty definitive answer as we talk about 1984. We'll see you then.
Look how fuckers. Wow, that monster.
Why wait, Massachusetts? Shop now and seize the summer. At Raymore Flanagan, you can save up to 20% on everything. Shop
I have to
online
come.
and in store
Sir,
today. And
I just actually want to hear something.
Massachusetts sales tax.
Want to fund my debt. Grave that I failed.
Interest financing for up to 72 months with equal payments. Why wait? Quality furniture in stock and delivered to your home in 3 days or less.
God, that's
Hurry
Flanagan.
up, save double the tax now at Raymore Flanagan.
I had two. Great.
Curiosity.
I advanced wars of it.
The process of life. All competing pleasures will be destroyed, but always,
Hang on, is it good summon?
always there will be the intoxication of
Oh, no.
constantly increasing
Close.
and
I only punched my head.
always, at every
Uh-huh.
moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on the enemy.
And
If you want
Cool.
a picture of the future, imagine a move stamping on a human face.
attack rotated. And turn. Draw. Set one. And
Perhaps the most
God.
influential dystopian novel of all
God.
time, 1984, provided the world with a vision of the
same
future
concept as
where
a magnetic blue
fascist and
sky.
totalitarian forces rule supreme. But to understand 1984,
Midnight blue,
you have to
yellow
understand its
star.
author, George Orwell, and what he was trying so desperately to warn us against. George Orwell was a socialist and an ardent anti-fascist.
Yellow star track.
In
Your
1936,
child
at the
confident
age
in
of
command.
33, he
And
signed
defender.
up to fight
At
in the Spanish
100
Civil War. And this was no mean feat. The British government,
I decked
trying to
in my
maintain
hand.
peace with Nazi Germany, which had already taken a side in the conflict, outlawed its citizens from volunteering to fight for the Democratic Republic of Spain. Orwell went anyway, determined, as he said, to fight fascists. But the Stalinist Soviet Union supported the Republic, and as the war began to go badly for the Republican cause, Soviet influence began to hold more and more sway. The once freedom-loving Republicans began to turn on each other, succumbing to the same type of ideological purity test that the Soviet Union had adopted under Stalin. So anyone not firmly a Soviet-style communist was being labeled a fascist and run out of the country or imprisoned. Orwell himself had to flee, and it was an experience that would color the rest of his life. It made him realize that totalitarianism, in all of its forms, not just fascism, was a threat to the future of humankind. He would write about this in his excellent Homage to Catalonia,
And turn.
where he recounts his
Draw.
adventures in the Spanish
Had
Civil
great
War,
monster
and
report.
again in Animal Farm, where he would deal directly with the descent of the Russian Revolution, from an ideals-driven, if perhaps somewhat naive, drive for freedom to a totalitarian nightmare of
Scrap
starvation
recycler.
and ravages. And while this analogy would serve well, where his ideas really hit home, his home was in his 1949 classic, 1984. He envisioned a version of Great Britain, dominated by a Soviet-style totalitarian government. It is a
And I got
surveillance state
stuck. I
with
said
cameras
one.
in every home, and neighbor primed to turn on neighbor, at work or at home, or walking about the town. One must conform to the thoughts of the party. It's where we get the phrase, Big Brother is watching you, which is plastered up all over 1984's London, or as it's known in the book, the principal city of Airstrip 1. And the terrifying thing is, they put pictures
I've
of
been
Big
saying
Brother
they all
on
got
their
in my
home.
picture
He's a
today.
venerated figure, even though no one knows if he actually exists. His watchful gaze keeps them safe and roots out traitors. Or at least that's what many people believe, because they're told every day that's what he does. But unlike the society in Brave New World, though, there's little about the England of 1984 that could even be argued to be better than the world we know today. This world is in a constant state of war. Buildings are left in ruins, and food often has to be rationed. Government services are nearly non-existent, and scientific progress seems limited to military and propaganda purposes. In fact, much of society's labor is devoted to propaganda. Newspapers are re-edited to remove the names and pictures of people the party no longer approves of. Speeches are constantly given about how terrible and evil the world outside England is. And films are spliced together for the 2 minutes hate, a daily ritual where people watch videos of enemies of the state and express their hatred for them. And while that last bit may seem almost absurd to us, listen to Orwell's description of what it was like to be part of it. The horrible thing about the 2 minutes hate was not that one was obligated to act a part, but that it was impossible to avoid.
Activate EMR.
Within 30 seconds,
Carrying
any
scrap
pretense
recycler.
was always unnecessary. A hideous ecstasy of fear and
I know
vindictiveness,
someone
a
who
desire
feels
to
sorted.
kill, to torture, to smash faces in with a sledgehammer, seemed to flow through the whole group of people.
AMR.
Turning one
Activating.
against one's will into
If you're a soldier,
screaming lunatic.
it's attack
And
point.
yet the rage that one felt was an abstract,
Attack!
an emotion which could be
My
switched to
blue
an object,
sky.
like the flame of
Okay.
1984 or Twitter's loyalty service.
And turn.
This idea is the true heart of
God.
it. And you may ask yourself, if
Shut.
society was that terrible,
Oh.
why didn't people just rise
Shut.
up? They may in the long run. They may, like the main character, harbor somewhere deep within them a hatred for the party and want to see it destroyed. But the
I am
populace is
going to be a
constantly
peacekeeper.
distracted from
Just
that
like
by
characters in a
xenophobia,
fortress.
nationalism, and hate. The idea that Orwell presents us is that people subtle enough and brutal enough can take
Now
the
then,
undirected dissatisfaction,
attack.
that undirected anger of a society,
Stop.
and
Hand
push
blast.
back whatever they will, using us
And
to tear ourselves.
Draw.
That does sound familiar, Zoe. Wait, have we heard stuff like that? There's a fantastic scene in which a person
Exactly.
makes a speech denouncing the countries that they're at war with. When halfway through that speech, the news comes in that they've
God.
made peace with their old enemies and allied against
Shit.
them to fight someone else. And without missing a beat, the order just
Oh,
starts
so
denouncing
no
the
gadget.
and
Actor
raising
and green
police
gadget.
control against a second before. And the crowd just moves with it. In a frenzy, they tear down the posters that some of them just hung moments before that lampooned the old enemy and start telling each other that they must have been put up by some double agents in their midst. As wild as this sounds, there are plenty of examples, both modern and ancient, of this sort of instant about-face happening. Of people subconsciously wanting more to express their hate or be part of a group than actually caring about what the group's principles are that let them do so. There are plenty of times throughout history where a group expresses a belief and then their leader, for whatever pragmatic ends they desire, espouses the opposite belief. And everyone who follows them not only switches what they believe in, but deny they ever believed in anything else at all. This is the warning that 1984 provides us. It tells us to catch ourselves, to stop ourselves in that moment.
Attack.
And remember what we actually believe,
And-
rather than what the group we belong to tells us. Because the alternative, well, that
I
one
carried your
is
mind.
deteriorating.
Recycler. That's funny. Kaiju. Why were you giving a giant spider? Use the end turn. Cool. Activating Cyber Blast.
Purina helps create safe
No more summon
spaces
green
for
gadget.
abuse survivors and their
As I activate, you again.
Purina cares here.
I
And
am
go
ready,
up
gadget.
the earth abides. A man reaches over the top of a rock ledge, and a snake strikes. He pulls his wounded hand away, stumbling back down the trail he'd been hiking in the woods. He's too
Gadget.
proud to get help. He gropes his way back to his cabin in the hills and collapses on the bed. Consciousness comes and goes. It's been days, weeks. Finally, though, his strength returns, and he hikes down the mountain to the
Why is
California
there
he'd
a
come
blanket on the
from.
floor?
But little of
I'm
that
just thinking of place
California
a
remains.
table there.
In the blink of an eye, humanity has been reduced to a
What?
pitiful fraction of what it once was. The meager survivors of a great
No more summon
plague.
Scrap Raptor.
And that is how
And,
Earth Lives begins.
God.
And it serves as a transition point in
Nice.
science fiction from dystopias to apocalypses. From the 1930s
God.
to the early 50s, we
And,
had the great era of
God.
dystopias, culminating in Vonnegut's 1952 novel, Light of the Air, and Bradbury's 1953 classic, Fahrenheit 451. These
God.
dystopias, driven by the fear of fascism, authoritarianism, and the almost
Attack.
unconscious relinquishing of freedoms
Check
that
it
come
out.
from wars.
And turn.
These novels were written by
Oh.
people who weren't traditionally science fiction authors, like Huxley or Orwell, using the traffic
I
of
created a
subjects
giant spider.
as a future setting or
Two.
advances in psychology
To summon like a
warn
spider.
about events they saw occurring in the present. And later in the 60s, as we'll talk about in a few episodes down the line, we'll see the resurgence
Rocket spider
of
attacks.
but this
And
time driven by fears of societal
God.
decay. In between the two, though, we'll see a flood of apocalyptic novels.
Set.
So how did science fiction
God.
move from
Must
things
be
are
a
gonna get
different.
bad to things are straight up gonna end? The answer's simple. The Cold War. In 1955, the Soviet Union tested their first hydrogen bomb, and it became clear to the world that for the first time in human history, we really did have the power to wipe everything out. Up until that moment, even after the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, fears were limited. At first by the fact that only one power in the world had nuclear technology, and then later by the fact that the USSR had access to only a limited amount of fission, not fusion weapons. But after the 1955 test, it was clear. If these two antagonistic superpowers went to war, there might be no going back. And in a few episodes, we're going to talk a lot about the hopes inspired by this new terror. This constant, omnipresent dread of annihilation that humanity had to live with every day. But today, we're going to talk about the book that stands at the inflection
Come forth.
between our obsession
Yeah.
with dystopias
The
and
man-
our fear
the-
of nuclear annihilation.
That's Kaiju.
Is Earth Abides. Published in 1949, the book revolves around humankind nearly being wiped out not by atomics, but by plague. It brings into sci-fi the post-war question of whether an ever-increasing human population is truly sustainable. And it conjures visions of us as McClear's rat, a species so abundant and so
Attack.
consumptive that when the first outside disease hits, it rapidly becomes extinct. But perhaps
And
more
it's
important to
her.
the history of sci-fi, it
Duh.
asks a question that's almost cliche in science fiction today, but was nearly unexplored at the
And
time. The question of
Duh.
how to rebuild after a collapse. The author addresses this in 3 stages. The first is a survey of the collapse, as his main character travels across America observing what remains. Here's where we get all the staples of post-apocalyptica we all know so well. Siphoning gas, scavenging canned food, and sleeping in hotel suites because you can. But it's here too that we see sci-fi first raise the question of how much of our knowledge will actually be applicable after the fall. And not just in a sense that if you were, say, a plastics engineer before everything fell apart, that knowledge won't be useful when the entire production chain that let us make plastics disappears, but in the larger sense that everything will simply be different. For instance, there's a great moment where the main character thinks about the millions of cattle in America. Will they devour so much of the plant life that sections of the United States are reduced to
Expired.
barren and unanchored plains of dust?
And-
Or will all this
Hi.
domesticated piece of prey make the predator population explode to such a degree that for at least a few decades, the world is far more dangerous than the one our ancestors
Tell them
faced
I'm gonna
thousands of years ago? In the end, though, the main character returns to California and sees that without the vast, interconnected web of commerce and travel that held us together, those who remain have started to pull back into village life. Which brings us to the second stage of rebuilding, creating a community. It's now 22 years later, and the first generation born after the collapse has started to grow up. The main character tries to start a school to teach these children, but they're not interested in the old things. Too much of our technology is too finicky, too unreliable.
Look who's summoning.
Even reading and writing are starting to slip away as time spent hunting or fishing or scavenging proves more valuable. And it's here that
Sounds
Bob
right.
challenges one of our modern notions. Most
You want to
post-apocalyptic
school.
fiction says that education is the answer. That if we
Sure.
could just teach people the old knowledge, humanity would right itself. But Earth Abides presents us with a
Well,
different
what's
idea.
in here?
What if knowledge has to grow with the society? What if
Sniper.
certain ideas are right for certain times, or for certain levels of development in other areas like politics or urban growth? What if the people,
Synchro
the
summon.
science alone, isn't enough for us to accept or use it?
Scrap
Perhaps we
grab.
can't just
Yeah, Dad?
the world is better. Perhaps a slower path has to be accepted, which leads us to the third
Tactics.
embracing the collapse. The main character is now an old man, very lucid, and he's given up on his dream to educate the youth.
Cool.
But now he sees something else. He sees hope in the primitive society that they've built. As the children, now adults, hunt game with primitive bows and fish with makeshift rods, he sees them working together without some of the racism or classism that haunted his time. And he realizes that perhaps this is a better foundation to start
Stop.
again. And sure, in time, when humanity is ready, he'll find the old books and the old devices and reemerge as a modern civilization. But this time, maybe they'll do it right.
Different.
Hi, Mark Perryman, Patriot Subaru. People often ask me, do you read your
Wait a
customer
minute.
reviews? Yes, everyone. It's a lot of reading. We have more Google reviews than any New England Subaru dealer and the highest rating. Patriot
Five.
customers share their experience
That is
in
a
their
quick.
words what
Yeah.
makes Patriot different.
Cool.
Now see for yourself. We love to serve our customers, our families, our community, and each other. Or Patriot Subaru, North Attleboro.
Cool. Almost a minute.
A dwarf on a giant's shoulders sees farther of the two. The red engine
Yeah.
comes racing up, its siren screaming, skidding to a halt before the old house. The men come tumbling out of it in their uniforms and fire gear. A woman stands outside, crying, judging. The men rush past her, up the stairs into the attic. The attic door swings open, and books come tumbling out. For a moment, a book falls, open, into his hands. Time has fallen asleep in the afternoon sunshine. He drops the book in fear and disgust. They open up their hoses. Kerosene, not water. The book's pages crinkle with the moisture, and the men back out of the home. It's time for their last act. But the woman was not supposed to be there. The police were supposed to pick her up long ago. Still, she stands there. The captain yells for her to move. Starts counting to 10. They can't do their job until she leaves. They're firemen after all. The captain is halfway through his count. Then it happens. The woman holds up one singular, slender match. Play the man, Master Ridley. We shall this day light such a candle, by God's grace in England, as I trust shall never be put out. That previous scene is perhaps the most pivotal in Ray Bradbury's masterpiece, Fahrenheit 451, because it begins the protagonist's long journey to answer the question, might these books, these fragile things that every night they burn, be worth protecting, even at the cost of life itself? On the broadest level, this is the story of Guy Montag, a fireman in a society where books are banned. Here, only comics, cheap interactive TV, and pornography is allowed. Whenever books are found, the firemen are called to burn the books, and whatever place was hiding them, to the ground. Early on, Montag is fine with this. He sees it as a good and honorable job. And he's bought into society's propaganda that books warp the mind and break down the social order. But over time, he secretly begins to keep some of the books he was supposed to burn. Curious as to why people would risk so much for a stack of paper, he begins reading them. And at last, he rebels against the society he's in, fleeing his city and meeting others like him, who after a one-day atomic war that decimates the unreading, unthinking world that he came from, begin to rebuild society once more. But as Bradbury himself acknowledged, this book is about many things. In his younger days, just coming out of the McCarthy era, he said the book was about censorship and book burning. However, later in his life, he said it was about the dangers of easy entertainment. So let's take both of those viewpoints and break them down a bit. The book itself is an abundantly clear condemnation of book burning and censorship. But what's most interesting is Bradbury's own commentary on it. Because even though he lived through the McCarthy era and the Red Scare, he said that censorship came from us. That the government couldn't censor things, at least not for long, if we as a populace didn't want them to. More than that, though, he made an impassioned argument for being careful about how we censor. He said that if every group got to pull out of books everything that offended them, or that they just didn't like, we'd soon be left with just empty covers. He also made a somewhat naive argument that if groups didn't like what a book said, rather than censor those books, they should just write their own. Of course, he really didn't take into account the fact that some groups may face more obstacles than others when it comes to things like getting books into mass distribution, or that ideologies like fascism and McCarthyism, both of which he despised, came from people publishing unchecked things which advocated the silencing of others. But his fundamental point was still worthwhile. Without us embracing the book burning of the Nazis, or the bonfire of the vanities, without us welcoming the historical revisionism that rewrites textbooks around the world, without us asking the government, albeit not explicitly, to censor the things we don't want to believe or find objectionable, censorship on a broad scale is impossible to sustain. And it's not only governments. Before this type of censorship even hits the government level, we do it to ourselves on smaller levels. Fahrenheit 451 itself was censored by the publisher in 75 places over the years. without the author's consent, because concerned parents wrote in about the swear words or depictions of drunkenness. But then there's that other point that Bradbury wanted to make. The point about easy-to-consume media slowly dumbing down what we consume until all we consume is nothing of worth. And on this, he's both heinously wrong and absolutely right. Because ease of consumption isn't the problem. It's the content, the dumbing down for ease of consumption, which in the end may take away something from us all. And it's funny because this idea came to him as he saw a woman walking with a handheld radio one day. She was oblivious to the world around her as she was so wrapped up in whatever she was listening to. Bradbury thought of her like a zombie, tuned out from the world and tuned in to an easy escape. Imagine how horrified he'd be by her smartphones. But the problem here is that he didn't know what she was listening to. She could have been listening to the Royal Shakespeare Company doing a rendition of Hamlet or Macbeth. And this is the problem with everyone who judges things by the medium they're rendered in, rather than the quality of the work. Over the 20th century, we've learned how to make media much easier to consume. We've come to a better understanding of the human psyche.
Make up French fries and zucchini pieces will be ready soon.
Come on, okay, Dad.
In general, comic books, television, and video games today
Go.
are way easier to consume than, say, picking up milk. But that doesn't mean that they're inherently less worthwhile. And in each of those previously listed forms of media, you can find works as impactful as Paradise Lost. And for James personally, Paradise Lost was a tour de force that changed how he thought about a lot of things. And yet, that statement holds true. The danger we have to avoid is simply being lazy in what we produce and what we consume. Because there are games and comics that challenge us and make us rethink our perceptions. And there's anime and TV that forces us to watch intently and to analyze, deconstruct, and dissect what we're viewing. Bradbury's fear is that we'll choose what requires the least of us, and the companies will cater to that desire. But that's not a problem with the mediums we choose or develop themselves. That's a problem with us. To avoid the dangerously vapid dystopia Bradbury presents us, we don't have to abandon new media. We simply have to look for the things that challenge us in all of the mediums we consume.
Cool. Set one. No, it's not actually a company. Attack. Okay.
Like us.
Go.
In order to get what we've got in Eden, we have, in effect, traded these people out of what was the most important thing on earth to them. The feeling of being needed and used. The foundation of self-respect.
Back to front.
A mechanical lathe lays smoking in the street. Next to it, the head of a robotic
Green tickers crap.
talks meaninglessly about a special on Brussels.
Void crap hole.
Men in bright costumes ransack stores and dynamite machines. An old order cast down, and even older order coming to be. Shots ring out. Explosions rock the streets. An automated bakery has been leveled. Overhead, a robotic helicopter flies, repeating a message for the citizens to lay down their arms. At that moment, a rocket fires. The helicopter tumbles out of the sky in a haze of fire and smoke. And inside and outside, 3 engineers and
I
crews
started a
senseless
scaffold and got
next,
cut.
because in a few short days, people will be rebuilding the very machines they just
Now I set.
Player piano is Kurt Vonnegut's first
Right.
work. Now, granted, it's probably not his best, because Vonnegut has some truly great novels out there, but it's one that's perhaps more relevant today than it's ever been. The book, as you might have guessed from the title, is about the question of mechanization and what we do as machines displace humans in more and more endeavors. But what makes it interesting is that the book is set in a near-future dystopia that in some ways isn't really a dystopia at all. The United States won World War III, but during the war, as all of the ordinary working-class people of America went off to fight, more and more was done to automate the factories at home to keep the work production. And of course, when the war ended and everyone returned home, they found that all their old jobs were gone. The machinists, the assembly line folk, the people who worked in manufacturing plants, all had been replaced by automation. And their replacements weren't going anywhere just because they had come home. This led to a period of unrest. But over time, the world settled into a new order because material wealth, society was overflowing with goods, and waste was almost non-existent. In fact, computers calculated exactly how much of every good was necessary, and production was set to exactly that amount. But this led to a two-class society: those who could be automated out of a job, and those who couldn't. Engineers, scientists, and a handful of people with distinctly human jobs like diplomat or actor remained employed, earned a great deal of money, and were on top of the world. Everyone else, however, was given make-work jobs, and essentially enough cash to live on. But even the ordinary person ended up with more stuff than in the world before the war, and now they had to work even less hard for it. So why were they content? It all goes back to the question of whether material wealth is actually how we should be judging our societies. Is there a point at which the standard of living can't be judged by how much stuff a person has? This is the central question of player piano. Should we be striving for even greater efficiency in our world? Or is efficiency something that may be too independent of reality to make the driving force of our society, much less our world? Now, you may argue that efficiency can be too morality. You could create a system that produces the maximum amount of goods. The caveat that goods production must not greatly endanger human life. While that's true, and certainly better than the alternative, one of the key points of the book is that even if you were to do that, you still have a system where on a case-by-case basis, very unjust things can happen to individuals because it makes for a better average. Take, for example, the case of a petroleum engineer in the book. He's brilliant, with an incredible mind for design. And in time, he invents a machine which can do his job. All of a sudden, he and 57 other people around the country are laid off because it's more efficient to replace them with machines. Okay, understandable. But then the man's life falls to pieces because he can't find another job. He has the certification for that particular petroleum job and no other. And the computers that run society have already made the calculation that it's more efficient to lose one potentially brilliant mind out of the lot than to assess and retain all 57. He was a cog for a machine that no longer needs to run, and rather than try to retrofit that cog to work in a new machine, it's just easier to throw it out and make a new one. And thus most of America is stuck with things, but without meaning. And that is the problem the book wrestles with. How do we define meaning for ourselves? What do we take pride in, get a sense of accomplishment from? And there are lots of answers to that. But for many people out there, a big part of it is the thing they spend most of their days doing, i.e., work. Whether that means you're proud to be a coal miner because it's a dangerous job that keeps the lights on for most of the nation, or you're just happy to be a darn good mechanic. People invest themselves most in the thing they value and spend most of their life doing, even more so than on spending time with their kids or the people they love. So what happens when you tell people at an early age that they'll never impact the world? That they'll never even have a chance to do anything that matters, even in a small way? That nothing they'll ever do is worth getting good at because a machine will always do it better? They suffer. And even worse, those who still have a function within society start to look down on those who don't. People who machines or innovations have made useless to the world, they see as freeloaders, lazy, or stupid, not realizing that one day that could be them. So in the end, Player Piano warns us of a new type of dystopia, one where the world looks utopic, where progress barrels ahead, where science and technology moves forward by leaps and bounds, where every day more material goods are pouring into our homes, but one also where humanity has outthought itself, and most of us are left behind, where we found no purpose to replace work, and have created an artificial divide between those who machines can't yet replace and those who already have been. But importantly, Player Piano doesn't argue against mechanization. In fact, in the closing chapters, there's a discussion on what machines are important to save, even if you were trying to tear the whole system down. But it does argue that we have to go about that choice intelligently. And we have to find other sources of meaning and other ways for those who have been displaced to give back to society and not simply resent their displacement. Because if we can't, It all just heads in place.
Oh. And oh. Almost a melon fire blast.
My longer snatch?
Bosses, attack! At this door!
So yeah,
No!
something about
You
saying
fool! You idiot fool!
as
I want you.
athletes, it's a
I don't want you to
our
scrap.
bodies in a way that lets us push ourselves to be our best.
That's the end of the video, guys. Bye.